The Vendar had never known defeat. For centuries, their war algorithms had dictated every battle, calculated every outcome, and assured them of absolute dominance. Their armies were engineered perfection, biomechanical shock troopers, precision-tuned war machines, and cybernetic generals who never knew doubt, hesitation, or failure. War was mathematics, and numbers never lied. Hadronox 4 was supposed to fall in 72 hours. The rebellion was insignificant, a predictable nuisance. Their war projections gave the planet's defenders a 0.3% survival probability. A rounding error. The Dominion fleet descended like a hammer, their Crimson War banners trailing through the sky as legions of armored warriors deployed in perfect formation. The first 30 hours were routine extermination. Vendar forces advanced methodically, tearing through resistance with brutal efficiency. Their mechs walked through city ruins, incinerating pockets of resistance. The war computers fed real-time assessments into High Marshal Keleth Exor's neural interface, enemy forces collapsing as expected. Victory guaranteed. Then something changed. The first sign of error came when an entire forward battalion, 3,000 Vendar warriors, supported by heavy armor, vanished. Not wiped out. Not defeated. Just gone. Aerial reconnaissance reported a few bodies in the streets, but no wreckage, no signs of a battle. Their distress signals had been abruptly cut. Impossible. Then, their supply depots started exploding. At first, Exor dismissed it as sabotage by insurgents. A nuisance at most. But then his frontline reports became incoherent. Troops reported ghosts in the ruins, enemies who never fought head-on, who struck and disappeared before a counterattack could even be formed. Mech squads were disabled remotely, their AI overrides scrambled by unknown interference. The war computers couldn't predict these anomalies. The algorithm had no contingencies for an enemy that refused to fight on conventional terms. By hour 48, Exor realized the truth. Humans. It should have been impossible. Humanity had remained neutral in galactic affairs for decades. They weren't even recognized as a major military force. Yet here they were, and the war computers had failed to predict them. Exor felt something he had never known before: uncertainty. He ordered a full planetary lockdown. No transmissions in or out. If humans were involved, it had to be a rogue element. A small, disposable force. A minor adjustment in strategy would crush them. Then the real war began. Vendar troops started disappearing in the night. Patrols would leave the safety of their outposts and simply not return. Those that did were found dismembered, mutilated, or, most disturbingly, completely intact but missing their weapons and armor. The war machines, Vendar's pride and technological masterpiece, began turning against them. Mechs executed their own pilots. Automated turrets opened fire on Vendar formations. Exor watched it all from his command citadel, trying to understand. Then, a transmission broke through his encrypted network, an impossibility in itself. The human's voice came through the static, calm, almost amused. You built an army to fight wars like a game of numbers. We don't play by your rules. It was mockery. An open challenge. Exor had had enough. He ordered an immediate full-scale assault. He would eradicate this infection, grind it out with brute force. No more precision. No more calculations. Overwhelming destruction. The advance began. The moment Vendar columns pushed forward, the ambushes began. Humans had rerouted their comms, sending false coordinates, fake distress signals, altered battlefield maps. The Dominion's own war computers became liabilities, feeding Exor deliberately corrupted data. Entire divisions marched directly into kill zones. Then, EMP detonations. Comms go dark. AI-driven weaponry shuts down in an instant. Vendar shock troopers find themselves blinded, cut off, leaderless. Then the real slaughter begins. Snipers. No warning shots. No wasted fire. Headshots only. Explosives in the rubble, Vendar tanks roll forward, detonating in massive fireballs. Shadows moving through the ruins, gunfire erupts, but the enemy is never where they expect. Vendar squads break formation, retreating into what they think are safe fallback positions, only to find human soldiers waiting in the dark. The war computers don't know how to react. They begin spitting out contradictory commands. Officers panic, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Exor watches from his citadel, disbelief turning to rage. His army is losing. Losing. He slams his fist into the interface. No more delays. No more games. He orders the full orbital bombardment of Hadronox 4. If he can't win, he will burn the entire planet. But his command is met with silence. His fleet, his glorious, unbeatable fleet, has been boarded. Human warships are already in the atmosphere. And before he can react, his fleet's own guns turn on the Dominion forces below. Exor stumbles back in shock. How? How does an inferior race destroy an empire's entire military doctrine in less than a week? Then, the transmission comes through again. That same human voice. Calm. Confident. Laughing. Your war is over. And Exor finally understands. The humans hadn't just fought the Vendar. They had hunted them. Slaughtered them. Turned their own machines, their own strategies, their own arrogance against them. And now, there was nothing left to fight for. The Vendar had never known defeat. Until now. And humanity never let an enemy survive a lesson. The Vendar Dominion had never known chaos. Their wars were conducted with perfect precision, each battle a carefully orchestrated series of maneuvers dictated by their war algorithms, flawless, relentless, inevitable. Victory was not a question. It was a certainty. Until now. High Marshal Keleth Exor stood before his tactical display, staring at the impossible. The holographic battlefield, once a neatly arranged display of progress and dominance, was now a mess of flickering red icons, entire battalions disappearing from the map. Entire platoons missing in action. Supply lines cut. Mech battalions hacked and overridden. Nothing made sense. His officers stood rigid, their neural interfaces overwhelmed with conflicting battle data. Their expressions, usually cold and confident, were now taut with confusion. Report, Exor growled. His voice was sharp, clipped, controlled, but there was a hint of something beneath it. Something the Vendar Dominion had never experienced. Doubt. A technician stammered, his secondary arms twitching in nervous spasms. We are unable to establish full battlefield awareness, High Marshal. Our reconnaissance drones are being hijacked the moment they deploy. The war algorithms are failing to produce reliable projections. The humans, there. Say it, Exor snapped. The officer swallowed hard. They are unpredictable. Silence. Unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. The humans were inferior. Their species had never been recognized as a major power. They had no empire, no vast fleets, no grand armies. Just small, scattered military detachments that the Dominion had barely bothered to consider in their war doctrines. And yet, this. Exor clenched his fists, feeling his bio-enhanced muscles tighten under his armor. He turned to his battlefield commanders, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. Bring in the prime enforcers. There was a sharp intake of breath among his officers. The prime enforcers were the Dominion's apex predators, their most elite warriors, genetically perfected, cybernetically enhanced, programmed for total obedience. They would wipe this infection out. At least, that's what Exor told himself. The transmission came in then, cutting through every security layer, hijacking the Dominion's encrypted frequencies. A human voice. Deep. Calm. Amused. You still think you're in control, don't you? Exor's blood ran cold. He had never heard a human sound like that before. The voice was not desperate. Not pleading. Not struggling against inevitable defeat like every other species the Dominion had crushed. No. This human was toying with him. Exor seethed, his teeth grinding together. "Who are you?" he demanded. A soft chuckle. Mocking. "You already know, High Marshal. I'm the reason your men are dying in the dark. I'm the reason your machines are turning against you. I'm the reason your perfect war algorithms are choking on their own arrogance." Exor's eyes flared with rage. "Face me, coward. Fight like a warrior." "Coward?" The voice chuckled again. "That's cute. You think this is a war?" A brief pause. "This isn't a war. This is an extermination. And you're the infestation." Exor's vision darkened with fury. The transmission cut out. He slammed a fist onto his command console. Enough. The Prime Enforcers were deployed, their black armor gleaming under the artificial light of the Dominion's war machines. Their movements were flawless, their formations mathematically precise. They advanced into the ruins of Sector 17, where the human forces had last been reported. No more deception. No more games. The Prime Enforcers would restore order. They moved in, rifles raised, scanning for movement. Their cybernetic enhancements allowed them to process thousands of data points per second. No living thing could outmaneuver them. They were the perfect soldiers. And then they started dying. The first kill was instantaneous. A sharp, precise silenced shot through a weak joint in the armor, one of the only 4 known vulnerabilities in Prime Enforcer plating. Then another. Then another. Their entire squad's comms collapsed into chaos. Unknown contact. Flanking. Flank. Silence. Exor's breathing slowed. His mind screamed in denial. The entire squad was eliminated in under 3 minutes. Impossible. Impossible. Exor turned to his officers. Deploy everything. Now. He no longer cared for strategy. No more calculated victories. He would drown them in fire. The skies burned as the Dominion's artillery platforms opened fire, turning entire city sectors into glass. The humans had nowhere to run. No cover. Nothing could have survived that bombardment. Exor exhaled slowly, reassuring himself. And then, from the smoldering ruins, the human transmission came back. Laughter. They were still alive. Exor's fingers curled into a fist. "What are you?" he whispered. The voice came back, low and merciless. "We're the species that doesn't play by your rules." Then the Dominion's warships started falling from the sky. Exor watched in frozen horror as his fleet, the invincible fleet of the Dominion, began losing control of their own systems. One by one, his warships turned their weapons on each other. A dread realization settled over him. The humans had never been fighting a ground war. They had been dismantling his entire empire from the inside. Peace. Bye. Peace. Exor's mind snapped. He turned to his officers. Retreat. Silence. I said retreat. His officers didn't move. They were staring at the command screens, frozen in place. A single red word flashed across every console, every data display, every interface. Overridden. The humans had taken control. A final transmission came through. A single sentence. The Dominion thought it was an easy victory. Exor staggered back. The last thing he heard before the human fleet opened fire was that same voice, calm and final. You should have surrendered. Status report, Exor snapped, his voice sharp as steel. Silence. The command bridge was in chaos. Officers scrambled at their terminals, attempting to reassert control, but every system was corrupted, hijacked, turned against them. The once pristine displays of strategic supremacy were flooded with red alerts, critical failures, overridden defense grids, fleet AI corruption. Exor's chest tightened. Status report, damn you. An officer finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Hi Marshal, we've lost all fleet command relays. External override detected. Our warships, there." The officer hesitated, eyes darting to the console in front of him, as if disbelieving his own words. Exor's voice dropped to a lethal growl. "They're what?" The officer swallowed hard. "They're turning on us." The words hit like a plasma bolt to the chest. Exor's fists clenched as he turned his eyes to the viewport, his gaze locking onto the orbital fleet above Hadronox 4. The unstoppable, flawless Dominion warships engineered to conquer entire systems in a single campaign were now tearing into each other with merciless precision. Gunfire. Explosions. Vendar dreadnoughts tearing through their own ranks. It was impossible. And yet, there it was. His own flagship's escort vessels had already turned their weapons inward, unleashing devastation upon their former allies. "How?" Exor whispered. The answer came in a voice that wasn't his officer's. It came through his personal neural link, overriding every encrypted channel, bypassing every safeguard, slipping into his mind like a whisper from a predator. "Your problem, High Marshal," the human said, voice calm and measured, "is that you built an empire that assumes the enemy fights like you." Exor froze. The voice was inside his command network. Inside his head. "Who are you?" he hissed. The human laughed. Not a laugh of arrogance. Not a laugh of mockery. A laugh of certainty. "I'm the man who just stole your entire fleet while you watched." Exor's breath caught in his throat. Then the bombardment began. It wasn't the Dominion's planned orbital strike. No, this was something else. Controlled. Calculated. Precise. Human hijacked warships executing Dominion ground units. Vendar shock troopers, still engaged in street warfare, suddenly found their own support ships turning against them. Exor's fleet, the fleet he had commanded for decades, was now an execution squad, answering to a new master. A human master. His rage boiled over. "You think this will break me?" Exor spat, turning from the viewport, voice thundering across the bridge. "You think because you turned my ships, you've won? We are the Vendar Dominion. We are perfection. We are war made manifest. You are nothing. Nothing. Static." Then the human voice came back, slow. Amused. "You know, High Marshal," the human said, "every species we've met thinks they're unbeatable. They all think they have the superior tactics, the superior army, the superior will." A pause. "And do you know what they have in common?" Exor's hands curled into fists, his bio-enhanced muscles flexing in fury. "They're all dead." Exor drew his blade. "Find me this human," he ordered, turning to his officers. "I don't care what it takes. Find him." But none of his officers moved. None of them could. Because every screen in the command center now displayed one thing. A single red warning symbol. Exor's eyes locked onto it. His mind screamed denial. Overridden. The bridge went dark. And Exor realized the final horror. The humans hadn't just taken the fleet. They had taken the Dominion itself. And there was nothing left to save. Exor's breathing was ragged, his body trembling with something he refused to acknowledge. Fear. His war algorithms had failed. His fleet, his perfect fleet, was no longer his. The Vendar Dominion, the galactic empire that had never known defeat, was crumbling before his eyes. Not from superior numbers, not from overwhelming firepower, but from something far worse. A predator that hunted without rules. A soldier that fought with no pattern. A species that turned every strength into a weakness. Humans. He slammed his fist against the console, but nothing responded. His war network was gone. His ships were gone. His command was gone. The realization clawed at the edges of his mind, but he buried it beneath fury. "You think this is over?" His voice echoed in the silent command center. "I still stand." I still breathe. He straightened, shoulders squared, as if he could physically hold his empire together through sheer will. I will not kneel to primitives. The human voice cut through the dark like a blade. You mistake this for a negotiation. Exor's head snapped toward the sound. A low, unhurried voice, soaked in certainty. It wasn't coming through his neural link this time. No, it was inside the room. He reached for his plasma glaive, but the lights died completely, plunging the bridge into darkness. Silence. Then a whisper, close enough to feel against his ear. Your empire is already dead. Exor whirled and swung, the blade cutting through nothing but air. His eyes adjusted just as a figure stepped forward from the shadows. A man. No armor. No genetic enhancements. Just a simple combat suit, a rifle slung lazily across his back. Commander Elias Voss. You, Exor snarled, gripping his glaive tighter. His voice, once ironclad, wavered under the weight of the impossible. You came here alone? Voss smirked. Did I? Exor lunged. The glaive cracked through the air, a perfect, lethal strike, faster than any unaugmented being could react. But Voss wasn't there anymore. He was already moving, stepping inside Exor's reach before the Vendar could correct his swing. A crushing blow to Exor's side. His body, engineered for war, absorbed it, but he still staggered, off balance. You fight like a machine, Voss murmured, dodging another strike. Predictable. Precise. But you've never fought someone like me. Exor roared and drove forward, glaive spinning in a blur of plasma and steel, each movement a calculated death blow. Voss sidestepped. Duck. Pivot. Counter. Exor was faster. Voss was smarter. The human didn't just dodge, he analyzed. He watched. Adapted. And on the fifth strike, he was already 2 steps ahead. A misstep. Exor's own weight betrayed him. And Voss moved like a knife sliding between armor plates. A single palm strike to the throat. Exor choked, his vision flashing red. A kick to the knee, bending it at a sharp, unnatural angle. Pain, unlike anything Exor had ever felt. Then Voss had the barrel of a sidearm pressed against his forehead. Exor froze. The bridge, the dominion, his entire legacy, shattered in a matter of hours. He breathed heavily, staring at the human standing before him. No power armor. No cybernetic enhancements. Just instinct, grit, and a lifetime of knowing how to win. Exor bared his teeth, blood dripping from his lips. Kill me. It won't matter. The Dominion will. The Dominion is gone, Voss interrupted, pressing the gun harder against Exor's temple. Your fleet? It's ours. Your war machines? They work for us now. Your empire? It belongs to the next species that wants it more than you. Exor's muscles tensed, every cell in his body screaming at him to fight, to reclaim his place, to resist. But the fight was already over. He had lost. And for the first time in his existence, he understood what it meant to be prey. Voss's voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. I'd say remember this day, but you won't be around long enough for that. The gunshot echoed through the bridge. Exor's body collapsed, lifeless before it hit the ground. Voss exhaled, holstering his weapon. His earpiece crackled to life. Commander, hostiles neutralized. We have full control of the Dominion fleet. Orders? He took one last look at the fallen warlord before turning toward the viewport, where Vendar ships were still burning in the void. Burn the rest of it down. A pause. Then the human fleet opened fire.